black account, and state it over again with his conscience, conscience looks into the statutes at large, finds no express law broken by what he has done, perceives no penalty or forfeiture of goods and chattels incurred, sees no scourge waving over his head, or prison opening his gates upon him. What is there to affright his conscience? Conscience has got safely entrenched behind the letter of the law, sits there invulnerable, fortified with cases and reports so strongly on all sides, that it is not preaching can dispossess it of its hold. Here Corporal Trim and my uncle Toby exchanged looks with each other. Ay, ay, Trim, quoth my uncle Toby, shaking his head, these are but sorry fortifications, Trim. Oh, very poor work, answered Trim, to what your honour and I make of it. The character of this last man, said Dr. Slop, interrupting Trim, is more detestable than all the rest, and seems to have been taken from some pettifogging lawyer amongst you. Amongst us a man's conscience could not possibly continue so long blinded; 3 times in a year at least he must go to confession. Will that restore it to sight? quoth my uncle Toby. Go on, Trim, quoth my father, or Obadiah will have got back before thou hast got to the end of thy sermon. 'Tis a very short one, replied Trim. I wish it was longer, quoth my uncle Toby, for I like it hugely. Trim went on. A 4th man shall want even this refuge, shall break through all their ceremony of slow chicane, scorns the doubtful workings of secret plots and cautious trains to bring about his purpose. See the barefaced villain, how he cheats, lies, perjures, robs, murders. Horrid! But indeed much better was not to be expected in the present case. The poor man was in the dark. His priest had got the keeping of his conscience, and all he would let him know of it was, that he must believe in the Pope, go to mass, cross himself, tell his beads, be a good Catholic, and that this in all conscience was enough to carry him to heaven. What, if he perjures? Why, he had a mental reservation in it. But if he is so wicked and abandoned a wretch as you represent him, if he robs, if he stabs, will not conscience on every such act receive a wound itself? Ay, but the man has carried it to confession. The wound digests there, and will do well enough, and in a short time be quite healed up by absolution. O Popery! What hast thou to answer for, when, not content with the too many natural and fatal ways through which the heart of man is every day thus treacherous to itself above all things, thou hast wilfully set open the wide gate of deceit before the face of this unwary traveller, too apt, God knows, to go astray of himself, and confidently speak peace to himself when there is no peace. Of this the common instances which I have drawn out of life are too notorious to require much evidence. If any man doubts the reality of them, or thinks it impossible for a man to be such a bubble to himself, I must refer him a moment to his own reflections, and will then venture to trust my appeal with his own heart. Let him consider in how different a degree of detestation numbers of wicked actions stand there, though equally bad and vicious in their own natures. He will soon find that such of them as strong inclination and custom have prompted him to commit, are generally dressed out and painted with all the false beauties which a soft and flattering hand can give them, and that the others, to which he feels no propensity, appear at once naked and deformed, surrounded with all the true circumstances of folly and dishonour. When David surprised Saul sleeping in the cave, and cut off the skirt of his robe, we read his heart smote him for what he had done. But in the matter of Uriah, where a faithful and gallant servant, whom he ought to have loved and honoured, fell to make way for his lust, where conscience had so much greater reason to take the alarm, his heart smote him not. A whole year had almost passed from the first commission of that crime to the time Nathan was sent to reprove him, and we read not once of the least sorrow or compunction of heart which he testified, during all that time, for what he had done. Thus conscience, this once able monitor, placed on high as a judge within us, and intended by our Maker as a just and equitable one too, by an unhappy train of causes and impediments, takes often such imperfect cognizance of what passes, does its office so negligently, sometimes so corruptly, that it is not to be trusted alone, and therefore we find there is a necessity, an absolute necessity, of joining another principle with it, to aid, if not govern, its determinations. So that if you would form a just judgment of what is of infinite importance to you not to be misled in, namely, in what degree of real merit you stand either as an honest man, a useful citizen, a faithful subject to your king, or a good servant to your God, call in religion and morality. Look, what is written in the law of God? How readest thou? Consult calm reason and the unchangeable obligations of justice and truth. What say they? Let conscience determine the matter upon these reports, and then, if thy heart condemns thee not, which is the case the apostle supposes, the rule will be infallible. Here Dr. Slop fell asleep. Thou wilt have confidence towards God, that is, have just grounds to believe the judgment thou hast passed upon thyself is the judgment of God, and nothing else but an anticipation of that righteous sentence which will be pronounced upon thee hereafter by that Being to whom thou art finally to give an account of thy actions. Blessed is the man, indeed, then, as the author of the book of Ecclesiasticus expresses it, who is not pricked with the multitude of his sins. Blessed is the man whose heart hath not condemned him. Whether he be rich or whether he be poor, if he have a good heart, a heart thus guided and informed, he shall at all times rejoice in a cheerful countenance. His mind shall tell him more than 7 watchmen that sit above upon a tower on high. A tower has no strength, quoth my uncle Toby, unless 'tis flanked. In the darkest doubts it shall conduct him safer than 1,000 casuists, and give the state he lives in a better security for his behaviour than all the causes and restrictions put together which law makers are forced to multiply. Forced, I say, as things stand, human laws not being a matter of original choice, but of pure necessity, brought in to fence against the mischievous effects of those consciences which are no law unto themselves, well intending, by the many provisions made, that in all such corrupt and misguided cases, where principles and the checks of conscience will not make us upright, to supply their force, and by the terrors of jails and halters oblige us to it. Chapter 42 Part 1